Earlier today, Congresswoman Kat Cammack of Florida introduced a discharge petition for the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which would force a vote on the House floor if 218 signatures are gathered. Now, in the last Congress, the discharge petition received 205 signatures, including 188 on the first day, the most that any discharge petition had ever received on the first day, but it fell short of the 218 needed to force the vote. So about 80 times, members went and asked for a vote on this bill. And 80 times, Speaker Pelosi denied them. This time, if the Congress can get to 218 votes, it will force a vote on the House floor on this very simple, straightforward bill. What does the bill do? Well, we'll talk about it with the bill's author, Congresswoman Wagner, who represents the 2nd District of Missouri.
To be with you, Tony, and all your listeners. Thank you so much for having me on this amazing and hopeful day.
All right, so where are we right now on the discharge petition here on the first day? How many signatures thus far?
Well, I will tell you what, we're trying to get up to about 200. And I just left the floor. I'm down in Whip Scalise's office right now, visiting with you and your listeners. And we were, I think, well past 150. And I'm wrangling them up as quickly as I possibly can. We now, with the swearing in today of Julie Letlow, we are at 212 Republicans. So I want to make sure that we get above 200 today, or at least hit that mark. And of course, we're going to have 212 Republicans that are going to sign this discharge petition, and a historic, Tony, 31 pro-life women are going to be on this discharge petition. We have one more open seat. Sadly, Ron Wright of Texas passed away, and his seat is still up for special election. So when that is filled here shortly, then we'll be to 213. We're 5 seats away. We need to really push 5 Democrats to do the right thing. And many of them have campaigned on and told their constituents that they believe in the sanctity of life. And let's hold them to it and see if we can't finally, after 80 tries last Congress on my bill, let's try and get them on the record this time around.
Now, Congresswoman Wagner, this is not really a stretch, I would think, for any member of Congress, because we're not talking about, although I'd like to see abortion eliminated, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a baby that survives an attempted abortion, simply saying that they will receive the same medical care as any other newborn baby, right?
That's right. That is absolutely right. Every precious baby, regardless, Tony, of the circumstances of his or her birth, deserves to receive the same life-saving care that any other child would receive. And I'll tell you, as a mother, as a legislator, and as an advocate who came to Congress to serve as a voice for the voiceless, I believe, like you do, and I'm sure your listeners do, that life begins at conception, and that it's wrong to kill a child no matter how many weeks old he or she may be. But what we're talking about here is infanticide.
Yeah.
To kill a child after he or she is born alive. 70% of Americans who identify as Democrats support this legislation. You're right, it is not a stretch. And I'm just so highly offended that Speaker Pelosi will not even allow folks to have a vote on this critical piece of legislation. So we're going to try once again. Should be at the end of the day about a handful shy on this discharge petition. So we need for your listeners to be the strong advocates that they are, and to contact their members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, but certainly on the Democrat side of the aisle, and make sure that they stand up for life, that they sign the discharge petition, and that we get every member of Congress on the record on this very, very important issue.
So, Ann, with that understanding of what the bill does, it draws a line at infanticide in the United States of America is what it does. It just says we are not going to, if a baby survives an abortion attempt, we're not going to end its life, and we're not going to let it lay there and die. We're going to give it basic medical attention. Are you telling me that it's questionable as to whether or not we can find 5 Democratic members of Congress that would say, I'm opposed to infanticide?
I certainly wouldn't think so. You should know, Tony, that this bill has passed the U.S. House of Representatives, and had this bill in the 115th Congress come to the floor, and it passed with bipartisan support. So it's been done before, and I believe if it came to the floor and members of Congress were forced to go on the record that yes, it would pass. And it should pass. As you said, this is not a stretch here. I believe that everyone should be on the record on this. And I'm going to tell you what, I will never stop working until this legislation is not just passed again in the U.S. House of Representatives, but until it's signed into law on the federal level. This bill also, I should tell you, has reporting requirements that say that healthcare providers and employees have to report any violations of the active law. Some of our issues in coming up with some of the data is that only a handful of states actually report. So we don't even know really how many of our precious babies are left to die in a clinic or a hospital, sadly. So it does multiple things, but the most important thing is it's going to save lives at this point.
And I know that you will not give up until the mission is accomplished. Congresswoman Ann Wagner, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your tenacity.
You bet. That I am. So thank you, Tony, and thanks to your listeners, and thank them now for the work they're going to do to make sure that we bring this to the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives.
Absolutely. We'll give it our best shot.